Hello and welcome back to another episode of Cricket Fables, where we talk cricket a lot of the time. We've had cricketers, we've had analysts, we've had reporters, we've had fans, and today it is my privilege to have a man I've worked alongside in a few press boxes over the past few years, mostly at ICC events. Tim Wigmore of the Telegraph Sport, and also the author of how many books, Tim? 4 or something now?
3.
3. I was close.
But I'll take the extra one.
Good to have you, Tim. Let's get straight into it. England won in South Africa a year ago or so. Now they've won in England. Of course, they have a very dominant home record. What do you think of the current team, just given the fact that they're coming from Sri Lanka, where they've now won, five test matches in a row, something which you generally would not associate with many touring Sri Lankan England teams?
Yes, England have now won 4 test series in a row, which is the first time they've done that, I think, since the team that went on to win the Ashes in 2005. So there's some good signs. They've won 5 away tests in a row, which is impressive. 3 in South Africa, 2 in Sri Lanka. So there's some good signs. I think they have quite good depth. You remember in Sri Lanka they had no Ben Stokes, no Jofra Archer, no Ollie Pope, no Rory Burns, and they still won actually both tests fairly comfortably in the end. So some pretty positive signs for England. India away is a massive challenge, and I think England will be able to score some runs in the first innings. But remember, last time England scored 400 3 times in the first innings, and they still got hammered. And I think that's
what I was going to say.
Fear for England, actually.
Yeah. Look, obviously, if you look at the history books, it was not that long ago that England, a different England team, yes, were the last one to win a Test series in India. So it's not like they don't know what to do. But yes, there will be questions over the batting. Let's talk about the real positive right now for England. Joe Root, we know, have all his problems with converting 50s into 100s. He got, 5 50s? The last Ashes did not get 100. Now he goes to Sri Lanka and sweeps over 300 times, say the stats experts. How do you think Joe Root's feeling right now?
Yeah, no, he's obviously feeling pretty good. I think there's a feeling that he needs to be a little bit more selfish with his batting. Like, he's a very good kind of team player and stuff. But as you said, lots of 70s and 80s, which are high class innings, but not necessarily are winning test matches. So he scored a double century in 180s. So that's a great effort. I think a great stat. He scored 134 runs with his sweep shot alone, which was more than any other batsman managed in total bar Johnny Bess. So he's coming into India in great form. He's a very, very good player of spin in Test cricket. I think averages 65 against spin in Test cricket. So he's a really, really big player. He needs to have a series probably a bit like Steve Smith had in 2017 India, because Smith got 3 centuries in that series, and sort of obviously Australia lost that, but he helped them be really competitive right until the end of that series. I think Root needs to have that sort of level. Obviously have Ben Stokes training as well, which another excellent player of spin as well, and also add balance to the side. The England had Sam Curran at 700, did very well against India in 2018, but he was a bit of a spare part in Sri Lanka. I think he got, and 2 weeks in the series, 13 runs, kind of neither here nor there. You replace him with Ben Stokes, so Stokes doing the bowling and the better bats, and you can move the keeper down to 7, and then you suddenly have a more depth with bat and ball, really. So that'll be another really, really good positive for England. And Jofra Archer coming in, I think he can do well in India. It will obviously be a big test, but he has all the tools to be a fantastic fast bowler. And some of his variations in the shorter formats, they might come in also with an older ball. You have to kind of make things happen.
Just coming back to one key feature of England's win in Sri Lanka, spin. We have Jack Leach now, who is arguably the better spinner between him and Bess. He's now been to Sri Lanka twice. He's done well. He's been a part of back-to-back series wins in Sri Lanka. Then you have Dom Bess, who gets 5 in South Africa a year ago, and then gets 5 and 9 here. Admittedly, like he said, was not the best 5 we could hold, which you would have had in his own words. But
I was going to say a few club bowlers were pretty jealous of that Burgold Pfeiffer in the first.
I think there's a former Sri Lankan captain by the name of, what was it, Rana Tunga, I think he said that, how did the Sri Lankan batsmen get out to these club bowlers? But anyways, do you see them both playing, given the amount of cricket you've watched from close proximity? Do you think one of them, maybe Leach and then Moeen Ali, comes right back into the 11?
It's a really good question. I think Moeen Ali right now is probably a better test bowler and test batsman than Dom Bess. But I think England have very much gone down the route of they want to give their guys a chance. I think Dom Bess will start the series. And the only way Moeen will play, I think, is if they think they need 3 spinners. and so he could play at 7. My sense is that 3 spinners is probably unlikely though, given that the wickets will be pretty flat basically, and you need good fast bowling as well. So yeah, I think Dom Bess will start the series. I think it's going to be a very, very big, orthodox off spinners in India often have, overseas often have quite a poor record.
True.
So I think it'd be a big challenge for him. You're right to say that like Leach, although his figures weren't quite as good, but he actually, he kind of looks like number 1 spinner when they play together, which makes it, he controls that bit better. And he's older. He's 29, not 23. And actually at Somerset they basically chose Leach over Bess as well. So yeah, Leach I think is a good bowler. His control is better, and his kind of command of line and length is better. Whether there's more, that he's not a massive turner of the ball. Sometimes you don't need to be. I think he's a good. He's averaged about 30 in Test cricket so far. He's done pretty well so far. So I would, I'd be more concerned about the performance of Bess. But yeah, both of them, it will be seriously challenging, and England will kind of. Actually at times in Sri Lanka in the first innings of the second test, they bowled their seamers more than their spinners, which you're not really meant to do during a long innings in Asia. And that's kind of reflects where they are. And you obviously have Joe Root who can bowl a little bit. It's not a bad option when it need be. But yeah, that's going to be England's real problem. And you talked about earlier the 2012 victory. Well, what was the big difference? Then England had Panesar and Swan, who basically both in their primes. And it kind of came together.
Huge difference, yeah.
And they outbowled India's spinners, Jadeja and Ashwin, that which was a sensational achievement, and obviously hasn't happened since. I think India have only lost a couple of Test matches since, and
one to Australia. I think that's it. And then they ended up winning that series after being 0-1 down in 2017.
Yeah,
there you go.
It's a tough. My sense is that England could play quite well and still lose 4-0, which is a kind of measure of how difficult this task is. But if you're being optimistic, I think you could say first test, maybe India kind of, actually England are perversely more acclimatized to conditions, because obviously India have been in Australia and stuff. And India's still missing some big bowlers, Jadeja and so on. So England, there's an argument England could batting with right-handers. To sort of stop, because potentially you could play 2 off spinners and sort of stop them having left hands to bowl at. So you'd say the first test is a case to be optimistic, and then you could also say the third test, a day-night test, potentially brings into play Anderson and Broad and England's kind of fast bowlers. And so if you're being optimistic, you'd say those are the 2 tests that England have the most chance in. That said, I think 4-0 is the most likely result, probably.
I like the fact that you brought up Anderson and Broad. I mean, look, what is this? The greatest, most successful fast bowling pair of all times. That said, they've not been immediately paired up, at the start of any series very regularly. Do you think now that, given the fact that Jimmy Anderson has bowled a lot of overs in Sri Lanka at the age of 38 and a half, outstanding, a guy you can really never write off. And then whenever we've seen that Broad has been rested for the first test, he roars back and makes a point in the second one. Do you see them both perhaps starting the first test as a pair?
I think it's probably unlikely. I think England, they're kind of a pair in England, but a kind of either or away, and that works really well. I think that you want to have Jofra Archer as a point of difference. You're going to have Stokes in, so you only probably pick them both if you feel you need 4 seamers, and you probably don't. I say again, the day-night test that I made about is when you'd probably say, maybe you'd pick both of them together. They both bowl brilliantly. I think there's the issue is, when the ball's a bit old and you want a point of difference, you might, one of them is great, but do you want both? And also just keeping them fresh for all these matches. And I think they both said actually they're quite, they knew coming out on this trip, if you look at it as one trip, 2 in Sri Lanka, 4 in India, that if they played 2 or 3, 3 tests, they're perfectly kind of happy with that, and they probably will both play that. So I think probably not at the start of the series, unless the wicket seems to be helping, pace more than expected, and they think, England seam bowling can be a real asset. Yeah.
Tim, just moving away from the actual team and the players into what you and I do, what is the reaction like going forward to this series back in England? Because these are unreal times. We know we cannot get to the grounds, we cannot travel. It's been hard on all of us, to write from our homes and our sofas. But what is the English press, first of all, saying about India? Because they're coming off this incredible an unforeseen high in Australia, you know. So keeping that in mind, as well as what England achieved in Sri Lanka 2-0, what's the general mood in the British press?
Yeah, I think there's a recognition, maybe a belated recognition of sort of the level of depth in Indian cricket, and in the sense that you almost had an Indian A team who basically have beaten Australia in their own backyard at their fortress, which is an amazing achievement. I think there's a real sense of how hard these challenges are. There's actually probably for the first time a widespread acceptance that this is actually a harder challenge than the Ashes away, even though the Ashes away is still probably the kind of the Everest of English cricket, just because of the kind of history of that rivalry. But there's acceptance that this is actually a harder series, and I think that's led to some of the criticism of the rotation policy, you know, of no Butler after the first test and so on, because the sense of that you wouldn't do this for an away Ashes. This is harder than an away Ashes, so why are you doing this? I think that there is a real sense of how difficult the challenge is, and there's also, you know, historically, obviously, you always think of playing India as you need to master the turning ball, but partly after Australia, partly after the last few years, there's also a real sense that actually you can almost overthink the spin, and the fast bowling is really, really good as well. And
it is.
You know, so a good example of this is Keaton Jennings, who England had kind of picked actually for the original tour of Sri Lanka a year ago before it got postponed, and he was picked as a specialist player of spin. Now, he wasn't massively in the conversation this time, although he's a very good player of spin. It was a kind of more kind of conventional, well, he's an opening batsman, he's not very good against high class seam bowling. Maybe go around in Sri Lanka, like, he can be fine, but in India, there's sort of that's not going to be okay. So there's a real overall a real sense of all the ways that India will challenge England, and I think kind of a recognition that it would take a miracle for England to win. And actually, if England are kind of competitive, lose 3-1, but kind of fight. And also there's a sense, if you get to the fourth day and you're in the test, and even if you're kind of rolled over the last couple of days, there's a sense that you've done pretty well. You've given yourself a chance. I think England just want to kind of get into the contest and get deep. And then sometimes think, you know, we've seen in sort of third innings in Asia, sometimes strange things can happen, but you've just got to be very tenacious and stay in the game in the first innings. And I think if England do that, that'll be a sense of, you know, they've done fairly well. And I think there's a realization that England can play well and still lose very, very easily, which I think again shows an acceptance of, you know, how tough a task this is.
Yeah. Good points. One last question. We've been talking about Test cricket, but I know there's another format, the shortest format, which I know you really, really like, and you've written a lot about it. You had a book that came out last year, Cricket 2.0. Just tell our viewers a bit about that book, Tim.
Sure, yeah. So the book is kind of, guess is the first real attempt to look at, to kind of take readers inside the world of T20, look at how it's changed the game. So we have, we have everything from chapters on like the secrets of the IPL to looking at, you know, the reasons for Chennai being so successful, the reasons for Bangalore being so unsuccessful, players who've changed the game, you know, AB de Villiers, Chris Gale, Rashid Khan, and actually some predictions for where T20 cricket will go in the future. And it was, it won the Wisdom Book of the Year last year, and it's out in India. So any Indian fans interested in the IPL in the short format, I think would really enjoy.